What's up, you guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Tokenicer, and I'm here to bring you guys in-depth analysis, news, and insights on the digital asset space, along with the progressive tokenization of the world. So in today's video, I want to do a little deeper of a dive into a crypto-to-crypto partnership that I personally believe has the potential to be the crypto partnership with the most real-world application through automating and interoperating all our data processing with the exponential development in IoT that we've been seeing over these past few years. But before we get started, let me just clear up with the fact that I'm not a financial advisor, and therefore nothing you ever hear or read from me should be taken as financial or investment advice. The FA I give out purely stands for fundamental analysis, not financial advice. But now that we got that out of the way, let's get right into it. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a little deeper of a dive into the partnership between Quant and Constellation. And I'll leave a little link up here and in the description for those of you who want to learn a little more about Quant or Constellation before I dive in. So I know I usually try not to show too much bias around here, but I want to point out the fact that this is one of the main reasons why these two are some of my favorite projects in the space. We see so many crypto-to-crypto partnerships that allow for things like cross-chain liquidity, and of course all that stuff is going to be needed to have this market continue to mature. But how many crypto partnerships can you really list are working to solve real-world issues and to be implemented into our real world? Probably not many. But anyways, this partnership between Quant and Constellation is built with a vision for building an internet for automated IoT and edge devices. And for those of you who aren't quite sure what IoT is yet, so think smart technology with variable data. So things like smart fridges, smartphones, fitness trackers, you get the point. And then edge devices are just pretty much things that transmit data between a network. So these things would be like routers, gateways, and nodes. And Quant and Constellation both already have their own respective networks and are already working to host developers to build out within their ecosystem. So the two are pretty much just combining the limits of both Overledger and Hypergraph together. And that's something that's pretty scary to even think about. And this partnership is going to allow the ridiculous amounts of data generated in each respective city to be securely used and interoperated to work together in one system. The potential of this partnership could range from things like cars connected to the road, which would be connected to the traffic lights, or things like apartments' energy distribution and ESG contribution. Now, you guys can probably already tell from all this, but this already doesn't sound anything like any of the crypto-to-crypto partnerships out there. This is beyond anything like, as we said, cross-chain liquidity or development support for applications. We've been hearing for years about how this new technology of blockchain and distributed ledgers is so revolutionary and how it'll change our lives. Well, here's the start to just one of the first steps into implementing this into our actual lives. On top of that, this partnership quite literally makes perfect sense. If Quant's the solution for blockchain and legacy system interoperability, and Constellation is the solution for not just interoperating big data, but also an upgrade to the hypertext, what happens when you combine the two of them? There's literally real-world utility and application from it. I mean, more than just changing how we can better use our data, but it's going to change the way we live our lives on a day-to-day basis. We already generate crazy amounts of data without even knowing it. When you're exercising, your Apple Watch is generating data that monitors your fitness, or when you're just online shopping on Amazon or whatever, you're passively generating data. And even when you're just browsing around on Google or any social network, you're passively generating data. But we're just talking about regular people's activities right now. We haven't even accounted for all those big corporations and businesses out there yet. So at the moment, each day we're creating about 2.5 million terabytes of data. But by 2025, that number is expected to go up to about 485 million terabytes a day. That's a growth of about 193x in the span of 4 years. If that doesn't show exponential growth, I don't know what does. And for reference, 1 terabyte is equal to about 25 games or 250 movies or 6.5 million docs files. So with so much of everything turning to data, including more sensitive information nowadays, things like banking info, healthcare data, and educational info, and now add in all the problems with privacy and security breaches we've heard over the past few years, it's probably time we get an upgrade, right? And because of the interoperability of Overledger between systems and Hypergraph able to reference data from any source, this also means that Quant and Constellation are going to be oracles for IoT and smart things by bringing in real-world data into these IoT systems to keep them secure and up to date. All right, so how this partnership is actually going to go is with Constellation's Hypergraph. They're going to be building a connector gateway into Quant's interoperability solution through their operating system, Overledger. Well, that sounds cool and all, but let's break this down a little more and really talk about what this means and does. So since Hypergraph is a layer 0 and able to work with any source of data, they'll be referencing all the different data sources to flow into Overledger through any blockchain, since its operating system is built over top of the blockchain and application layers. So to do something like this, you're not just going to need to be secure because of how bad shit could potentially get with improper data inputs. I mean, we could be seeing cars crashing left and right, or even buildings catching on fire. As awesome as autonomous technology sounds and is, usually the margin for error for them is paper thin. But you've also got to be ridiculously scalable too, since there's going to be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of data inputs per second going into the system if you're connecting everything IoT in a city. So they're going to be using 11 different layer 1 blockchains for this mission, some private permission enterprise ones and some public permissionless ones. They've come up with a way to properly decentralize information and the processing and the validation of it, whether it be data from the enterprises of the private sector or government data they'll all need to be interoperable between every blockchain, because you never know what someone else might be using on the other end, right? I'm not sure what service provider or device you're watching this on, but interoperability that's doing the job for us so that we don't need to know. So to start out, they'll be developing a sandbox testing environment for developers to build on because, well, I'm sure you guys could imagine what would happen if we were testing these things just out in the open. And basically the sandbox will be to test and build all the automated technology through IoT and AI. So what we've seen in IoT so far is just the first step of where all the data just gets sent to the cloud and rarely has any use after. The next step is to let these sources of data be interchangeable by going through an interoperable system into any source or device. You could also think of this as the next step for machine-to-machine communication, where you got computers around the world that can talk to each other, but right now it's only with the inputs we give it. Quant and Constellation is going to be what gives these machines the power to work together with automation. So if we were to try and build this mission out using the current IoT systems we're in, our biggest problems would be the fact that large centralized entities hold most of the data in the world. So for example, big data companies like IBM. So Quant and Constellation are ensuring a decentralized network where the data is automatically and securely validated and processed. Now, what would this mean for us regular citizens? Well, basically a majority of things in our daily lives could have some sort of smart technology integrated to them. So like we were talking about before, IoT integrated buildings to best distribute energy, cars connected to the road and lights, entrances to public places, which Constellation actually is already doing with their door traffic miner. But yeah, the possibilities are pretty endless if you try to get creative. This idea isn't something super new or unheard of though, maybe in the world of crypto, where we're still laying down the infrastructure in the underlying technology. But the idea of smart cities have actually been around for quite some time now. There's been government agencies around the world who have spent billions of dollars in trying to build out smart cities, with Europe spending about 2 billion euros every year to try and turn this idea into a reality. But Gilbert, the CEO of Quant, states that the reason we haven't seen any of these ideas come to life yet, even with all the money they've poured in, is basically because of a lack of an interoperability solution. And that's why this partnership has two interoperability solutions at its core. Constellation interoperating big data and data sources, and Quant interoperating networks and systems. The best case scenario for this partnership would really be that if they were able to successfully integrate it into a couple large cities, and then eventually having that take a network effect and eventually growing out to where their platform becomes the global standard for distributed ledger, IoT, and automated tech. And just like with any other disruptive technology, in IoT, that sector is exponentially growing right now and expected to hit about $1.5 trillion within the next 5 to 10 years. By the end of this year, we're expected to have about a total of 28 billion smart devices come online. With about 8 billion people in the world, that's 3.5 devices per person. Remember when just having one smartphone was a big flex? Well, by the end of this year, you're going to need 2 more smart devices just to even keep up with the trend. It's not just the amount of devices coming online that's kind of to worry about though. It's the aggregate bandwidth that is actually the biggest issue. But the amount of data that all these devices are going to generate it's going to be insane in aggregate. Every device is expected to make about 1.7 megabytes a second, which will equal to 147 gigabytes a day. And all this data obviously isn't just stored on your device. A lot of this data is stored on the cloud and sold to big data companies, which if we're storing sensitive data, especially data that's going to be utilized, we really shouldn't be letting these centralized big data giants manage or store it. And especially not on a cloud that we hear gets hacked on a consistent basis. I mean, like, it's not crazy uncommon nowadays to see clouds being hacked or even big tech giants breaching our data privacy and storing data they shouldn't even have access to. When some of these things get hacked, it's not just some software that goes down or a temporary bug. I mean, some of these things they could literally have people dying in the worst case scenario. Because, well, if we store data on the cloud, just imagine if something built with the scale of this, like interconnected cities, gets hacked. It's not just the smart technology that goes haywire, but depending on what's built and connected, we could see fake news headlines causing panic from people across the city, buildings' electricity going crazy like power outages and smart power grids completely being wiped out, security cameras around the world blacking out, and then there's DDoSing and ransomware. You guys get the point. There's a lot of potential risks in this mission, but at the same time, the benefits heavily outweighs the cons, especially if done right securely, just like how they're doing. There's been estimates that a mission like this could potentially add about $20 trillion in GDP by 2026. And by as early as 2024, the World Economic Forum believes that the entire smart city sector will be growing at a rate of 23% year over year. Now, those numbers might not make you jump out the seat compared to the gains in crypto and having crypto growing at 113% a year, but 23% a year is a pretty high annualized growth rate. We all know the impact of the housing markets around the world over the past few years because of all the money printing we did. Well, the housing market rose on an average of about 25 to 30%, so not far from where this smart city sector is going. Now, let's take a moment to talk about some of the infrastructure from the legacy world that could really benefit from this. From things like public transportation, airports, banks, retail stores, big tech and data businesses, even restaurants or government-funded businesses. So some possible examples I can think of coming up this collaboration are, for example, during times where there's emergency vehicles trying to get through to a busy intersection, depending on what the situation is, those couple seconds where an emergency vehicle is waiting for everyone to clear out a road for them to drive through, that can be the difference between life and death for where they're trying to get to, or the difference between a building burning down to ashes and saving that building, or the difference between cops being able to stop a potential shooting before anyone gets hurt. Another example relating to preventing tragic events is that when all these buildings are connected with smart data, we'll be able to track the status and conditions in these buildings through a database. From some basic things like checking the temperature and air quality in a building to some bigger, more serious ones, like perhaps maybe linking a stream of data from one building securely flow to another building, or syncing smart homes for where there might be like a crazy shooter or a fire outside or something in the neighborhood that alarms everyone nearby. Now also, both these guys have some form of association with Mobi, the DLT consortium to build standards for autonomous vehicles and data sharing. So Quant's currently working with Mobi, but Constellation has said they've personally wanted to go beyond cars within the mobility sector, which I guess kind of makes sense since they're going to be working with a bunch of aircrafts with the DoD, and then whatever the hell else they're going to be doing with Space ISAC. Maybe UFOs, who knows? But Constellation did co-author 2 white papers with Moby during the time they worked together. One for the problems in our current methods of data exchange, and the other one for a mobility marketplace with a connection and transportation-centric ecosystems. And Quant's been with Moby since like late 2019, I think. So the two of them have definitely some knowledge in data sharing between autonomous vehicles. It's possible that they potentially do something like that themselves in this mission. I mean, they've got everything there already, big data and interoperability. And aside from Moby, both Constellation and Quant have also had some contributions to the Hyperledger Foundation. The Hyperledger Foundation pretty much is a consortia that works to build the infrastructure and everything else that's needed to build out these ecosystems in the blockchain world. So we could see some other members of the Hyperledger Foundation possibly joining in onto this partnership in the near future. So I'm not like super deep into the whole programming and technical parts of this, or the whole crypto space in general. I only know about 2 lines of code, honestly. But the way I could see this is Constellation being the layer 0 standard that all these autonomous car manufacturers have to follow and build their data stream on. And then using overledger gateways, they can connect all the data into hypergraphs So I'm not super deep in the whole programming and super technical aspects of the crypto space in general. I mean, honestly, I only know about 2 lines of code. But one possible assumption I have for this is with so basically I could see Constellation being the layer 0 standard that all these autonomous car manufacturers have to follow and build their data streams on top of. Then using overledger gateways, they can connect all that data into Hypergraph's overledger connector, letting all the data Quant gets from other blockchains to be distributed between all these cars in real time. Once we get into the automation and robo stuff, we've really got to start to deal with things in real time and securely verify data. Because say, for example, later in the future, there could be IoT construction machines that can be operated without anyone in them, just in architecture building it on a multi-chain application in the comfort of their own home. That machine is going to need real-time input for controlling it, or it could cause some serious damage. Or if, let's say, maybe it gets some malicious data fed into it, somehow, well, maybe that machine just starts tearing the whole building down. This is going to be a huge leap for our world in terms of stepping more towards a digitized world and taking a bunch of time and development before we can really see this fully at scale. And the cool thing about interconnecting cities as part of this is it kind of creates another form of network effect where eventually every country could potentially be connected together. This would let things like other central bank digital currencies to be connected and very easily interoperable with any other country they wish to connect. But also, let's say you're in the US and you're planning to drive up here to Canada for a visit across the border. Well, there's the chance that Canada and the US might be using different blockchains and data streams, which would need a form of interoperability, especially when we're talking about connected systems for autonomous vehicles, which will need to adapt to different data layers that, again, each different country may be using a different data layer. So by building a world where we're all digitally connected, we're now more connected as a single global economy rather than a bunch of different countries fighting together. Basic economics say that competition between these countries is what keeps growth going. But maybe doing this could also lead to more countries working together more than just through global trade. But Quant and Constellation both describe the topic pretty broadly, without too much mentions of it since then. Then again, I guess what they're doing here isn't just gonna happen overnight. This vision between them is probably gonna take years, if not decades, to build out. Probably a few years developing, a few years testing in sandbox environments, and then gradually integrating it into more and more parts of our daily data generating lives. It's definitely gonna be interesting to watch as they progress in what they're setting out to do, by really bringing the benefits that the integration of blockchain and distributed ledger technology will bring to our daily lives. There's an endless amount of possible development that you could think of for this collab between the two of them though. And again, this should really scream the future is here to you more than anything else. Besides maybe Mark coming out announcing he was turning Facebook into a metaverse. But to me, this really shows Constellation and Quant are both working really towards building a long-term vision into the future and not just being here for the short term. They're here to change the way we all live and go about our daily lives. Both these company solutions are already being utilized by some huge corporations and agencies today, like SIA, Splunk, Oracle, Space ISAC, the UK government, the Department of Defense. That already shows to me that there's real demand for what these guys are building. And regulations-wise, I feel like these would be a lot safer than many of the other crypto projects out there. Quant's already been registered as a utility token under FINMA, and I doubt that the Department of Defense would be partnering with a quote-unquote unregistered security. So again, this partnership is going to be taking years to build out and maybe even decades to fully turn their idea into a reality. But I figured I'd go a little deeper into this with you guys since I really think it's the first mission to really bring blockchain and distributed ledger benefits into all of our daily lives across the world. I'm telling you guys, the next big disruption coming in the next few years, if it hasn't already been obvious enough from some of the stuff we're seeing evolve, it's going to be smart automated technology. We've had the technology for it for quite some time now, but we just needed a global, decentralized, while also being scalable and super secure and interoperable platform to build the foundation of it. Like all the data pipelines and the interoperability for all these different data sources that are going to be flowing in and out. But yeah, that's pretty much it for my little breakdown of this partnership between the two of these guys. Again, absolutely huge potential in this partnership over the long run. I'm hyped to watch what these guys keep building and progressing towards in their own ways. But yeah, that's pretty much it for my little breakdown of this partnership between the two of them. Again, absolutely huge potential in this partnership over the long run. I'm really excited to keep watching Quant and Constellation keep building together. And don't forget, if you liked what you saw today, show some love by hitting that like and subscribe and turning that ringer on so you don't miss a thing. And remember to check me out on some of my other content platforms if you haven't yet. If you want to connect with me or just stay up to date, I'm always available on Telegram, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you want more fundamental analysis content like this, check out some of my articles on Medium. All of this is at Tokenicer. Or for those of you guys who want more fundamental analysis but don't have the time to read, I got you guys with the Spotify podcast right here at Tokenice TV. And I'm still working to get all this up on Apple Podcasts sometime soon. But anyways, yeah, thanks again for tuning in. And I hope everyone got something good out of it, whatever it may be. But that's all for today. I'll catch you guys next time. And until then, stay safe out there and keep grinding. Peace.